She walked into my room like she owned it. Captain Eric Voss had spent years in the military, dealing with alien threats, space battles, and political chaos. He thought he had seen everything the universe had to offer. Yet nothing could have prepared him for the woman who walked into his private quarters that night like she owned the place. It was a quiet evening aboard the USS Horizon, a massive starship that had been stationed near the edge of the galaxy for months, observing a distant star system. Voss was in his room, reviewing some reports from the latest skirmish with the Krathian Empire. The light from his desk lamp flickered slightly, casting long shadows across the sterile white walls of his room. Then, the door opened without a knock. A figure stepped inside and Voss froze, his hand still hovering over the datapad. The woman was tall, with long dark hair that shimmered under the artificial lights. Her eyes, strikingly sharp and filled with a quiet intensity, locked onto his. She didn't hesitate, didn't ask for permission. She just walked in like it was her own space. "Who are you?" Voss demanded, his voice steady but his mind racing. She didn't flinch. In fact, she almost seemed amused by the question. "I'm Isha," she said, her voice smooth and calm, "and I need your help." Voss stood up from his chair, narrowing his eyes. He was used to dealing with all kinds of people in the fleet, but no one had ever barged into his room like this. "Help! Who the hell are you, and how did you get past security?" Isha didn't seem concerned by his questions. "Security is a bit overrated," she said, her tone cool, almost casual. "I got here because I wanted to, and as for who I am, well, that's a longer story." Voss stepped forward, his military instincts kicking in. He couldn't let this stranger, this intruder, disrespect him or his position. "You have 5 seconds to explain before I call security and have you thrown off this ship." Isha met his gaze, her eyes intense. "I don't think you'll do that," she said softly. "And frankly, I don't think you should. What I have to offer is much more valuable than anything you'll find in a prison cell." Voss hesitated. Something about her presence made him pause, a strange sense of unease creeping into his mind. He couldn't quite place it, but he felt like she knew something he didn't. He was about to open his mouth and demand an answer when she spoke again. "Look, I don't have time for games. The galaxy's in trouble. There's an artifact, a relic of a long-dead race, and it's been found. The Krathians are after it, I'm after it, and you're going to help me find it." Voss stood frozen for a moment. The Krathians, a ruthless empire that had been waging war across the galaxy for decades, a race known for their brutal tactics and advanced technology. Why would they be after an artifact? And why was this woman so sure he could help her? "I don't know who you are or what you're talking about," Voss said, trying to regain his composure. "But I don't deal with relic hunters or whatever it is you think you're doing." Isha didn't seem to be bothered by his resistance. Instead, she stepped forward slowly, closing the gap between them with a confidence that made Voss feel like he was the one on the defensive. "You should, because the artifact is the key to humanity's future. Without it, the Krathians will wipe us out, but if we can find it first, we might just stand a chance." Voss's heart skipped a beat. Humanity's future. The Krathians were already a serious threat, but what did this artifact have to do with saving the entire species? His curiosity was piqued, but he couldn't show weakness, not in front of a stranger like her. "Why me?" he asked, his tone a little softer now, though he was still cautious. "What makes you think I can help you?" Isha smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was knowing. "Because you're one of the last descendants of an ancient line, a line that the Krathians don't know about, a line that has been forgotten by most. You carry something they want, something they won't stop until they get." Voss frowned, confusion clouding his mind. "Ancient line. Forgotten? What are you talking about?" She crossed her arms and leaned back against the wall, studying him for a moment. "You're not just any captain, Eric Voss. You're part of a lineage that stretches back millennia, long before humanity ever left Earth. You and your bloodline were meant to do something far greater than fight for this galaxy. But I'm guessing you don't know that, do you?" Voss's mind raced. He had heard rumors of ancient Earth myths, stories of secret bloodlines and powers, but he never put stock in them. Those were just stories, nothing more. "I'm just a soldier," he said, his voice a little quieter now. "What are you really asking of me?" Isha took a step closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "I'm asking you to help me find the artifact before the Krathians do. If they get their hands on it, they'll use its power to wipe humanity from existence. They've done it before with other races, but with you, we might have a chance. The artifact responds to the bloodline of your ancestors." Voss felt a shiver run down his spine. He didn't believe in ancient bloodlines or mystical artifacts, but Isha's words struck a chord deep inside him. Was it possible? Could there really be something in his past, something hidden, that could change everything? For the first time, he felt a surge of something other than skepticism. It was hope mixed with fear. Fear of the unknown, but also the terrifying possibility that everything he had known was wrong. "All right," Voss said, his voice steady. "I'll help you. But you need to tell me everything. No more secrets." Isha nodded, a look of approval crossing her face. "I was hoping you'd say that." As she turned to leave, Voss hesitated. "Wait, why now? Why didn't you come sooner? Why are you telling me all of this?" Isha paused, her back still to him. "Because we don't have time. The Krathians are already on our tail, and this mission, it's the only chance we have to turn the tide. Once we leave this ship, we're on our own." Voss watched her leave, his mind spinning with questions and doubts. But one thing was clear. His life was about to change forever, and whatever it was that Isha had brought into his world, it was far bigger than he could have ever imagined. As the door slid shut behind her, Voss stood in the middle of his room, staring at the empty space she had occupied. His fingers grazed the surface of his desk, the reports now forgotten. Something was coming, something dangerous. And for the first time in his career, he wasn't sure he was ready for it. The next few days passed in a blur of frantic preparations. Captain Eric Voss had never been one for impulsive decisions, but the mission Isha had dragged him into felt far too important to ignore. The artifact, the key to humanity's survival, was somewhere out there, hidden on a distant planet, and they had to get to it before the Krathians did. Voss couldn't shake the feeling that everything he knew about the universe was about to be turned upside down. His ancestors were somehow tied to this mystery, though he had no idea how. He was just a soldier, raised to follow orders and lead his crew. But now, he was the key to saving humanity from an alien empire that was hell-bent on destroying them. And if that wasn't enough, he had a stranger, no, a mysterious woman, at his side, dragging him deeper into something he didn't fully understand. Isha had been everywhere on the ship, quietly making preparations of her own. She was a woman of few words, but when she spoke, it was always with purpose. She never seemed worried, never seemed to doubt that they would succeed. But Voss could see the way she studied him, measuring him, testing him, as though she was waiting for something, some shift in him that would unlock the next piece of the puzzle. The mission itself was simple in theory. Find the artifact, get it before the Krathians, and return. But simple was never how things worked out in the galaxy. Voss had briefed his crew about the mission. They would be flying out to the planet Ares 9, a forgotten world on the edge of Krathian territory. The planet was uninhabited, or at least that's what the records said. But rumors of strange, powerful artifacts hidden beneath its surface had persisted for centuries. Now, those rumors were their only lead. The USS Horizon set course for Ares 9, its engines humming steadily as it traveled through deep space. The ship was sleek, built for speed and agility rather than heavy combat. Voss liked it that way. It meant they could outrun most enemies, but even speed wouldn't save them from the Krathians if they arrived first. Isha stood by the observation window, her eyes fixed on the stars outside. There was a calmness to her, a quiet strength that seemed to fill the room. Voss had never met anyone quite like her. She was more than just confident. She was composed, as though she had been through far worse and had come out the other side unscathed. He watched her for a moment before walking up beside her. "So, how do you know about all of this? The artifact, the bloodline, the Krathians, why is it so important?" Isha didn't immediately answer. Instead, she turned her gaze to him, her dark eyes studying him as though weighing his every word. Finally, she spoke. "I'm not human, Voss, not entirely." Voss raised an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" "I'm from a race that was once closely allied with humanity's ancestors. We were an advanced civilization, one that predated even your earliest space travel. But we were wiped out in a great war. We created many things, artifacts, weapons, but we also left behind knowledge. Knowledge that could help humanity if they're willing to use it." "Wait a second. You're saying you're what? An alien?" Voss was having trouble processing this. Everything he thought he knew about humanity's history was slipping through his fingers like sand. Isha's lips curled into a faint smile. "I'm not just any alien, Voss. I'm one of the last of my people. My race was known as the Alarian, but we've been gone for millennia. We were meant to help humanity when the time was right. Unfortunately, the Krathians found out about us, and they've been hunting us down ever since." Voss felt a knot form in his stomach. He had heard rumors of ancient, powerful races before, but hearing it from someone like Isha made it feel real. The Krathians hadn't just been conquering the galaxy. They had been erasing history, erasing the very building blocks of humanity's future. "Why me?" Voss asked again, though his voice was quieter now, more thoughtful. "What makes me part of this?" Isha turned fully toward him, her gaze intense. "Because your bloodline carries the key. You're descended from the humans who helped create the artifacts. The ones who interacted with my people. The Krathians don't know this, but you do, and you will help us unlock the artifact's true power." Voss stood there, trying to wrap his head around her words. His ancestors, some long-forgotten group of humans, had played a role in all of this. It felt surreal, but Isha wasn't the type to lie. She had a quiet confidence about her, a certainty in her voice that made it hard to dismiss her claims. "You still haven't told me what this artifact is supposed to do," Voss said, his voice steady. "Why is it so important to the Krathians?" Isha looked away for a moment, her expression darkening. "The artifact isn't just a tool, Voss. It's a weapon. A weapon capable of controlling the very fabric of space and time. My people created it as a last-ditch effort to stop the Krathians, but we failed. The Krathians got their hands on it, and they used its power to devastate entire worlds, civilizations that never stood a chance." Voss swallowed hard. The weight of her words settled heavily on his shoulders. If the Krathians controlled that kind of power, humanity wouldn't stand a chance. "What happens if we get there first?" he asked. Isha's gaze turned steely. "If we can activate the artifact before the Krathians do, we'll have the power to fight back. We'll have a chance to change the course of the war, to tip the scales in humanity's favor. But only if we act quickly. And only if you're willing to accept the responsibility of what that power means." Voss didn't answer immediately. He thought about his crew, the men and women who trusted him. If he was going to lead them on this mission, he couldn't afford any doubts. He had to trust Isha, even if he didn't fully understand everything. Time was running out and the stakes had never been higher. "We'll need a team," Voss said finally. "I'm not going in alone. I'm not risking my crew." Isha nodded. "I'm not asking you to. We'll need all the help we can get. The Krathians have spies everywhere, and we can't afford to be caught off guard." Voss turned to the console and keyed in a command to prepare the USS Horizon for the mission to Ares 9. As the ship's engines hummed to life, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into something much larger than himself. This wasn't just about a mission anymore. It was about the survival of humanity, and he had no choice but to be a part of it. "Let's do this," Voss said, his voice filled with resolve. Isha gave him a slight nod, her lips curling into a faint smile. "We're ready." As the USS Horizon sped toward Ares 9, Voss couldn't help but feel the weight of history pressing down on him. The artifact wasn't just some treasure, it was humanity's last hope, and he was the only one who could lead them to it. The USS Horizon moved through space at full speed, its sleek frame cutting through the darkness of the void. Captain Eric Voss sat at the helm, his eyes locked on the starry expanse ahead, though his mind was far from the calm of the stars. It had been hours since they left the familiar systems behind, heading into uncharted space. Every second, the weight of the mission grew heavier. They were headed to Ares 9, a planet on the edge of Krathian territory, one that was rumored to hold an ancient artifact that could change the course of humanity's future. Isha stood near the observation window, her dark eyes scanning the endless black. She had been quiet since their departure, the same intensity in her expression as always. But Voss could sense something was different. There was a palpable tension in the air, something he hadn't seen in her before. It wasn't fear exactly, but a quiet unease, as though she was preparing herself for something she couldn't quite control. "Something's wrong," Isha finally said, breaking the silence. Her voice was low, almost a whisper, but there was a gravity to it. Voss glanced at her, surprised by her sudden change in tone. "What do you mean?" She turned to face him, her gaze unwavering. "The artifact is more powerful than we realized, and I think we've underestimated what it's capable of." Voss frowned, his thoughts racing. He'd known the artifact was powerful, but he didn't understand just how much. "You didn't tell me it was dangerous." "I didn't know," she replied, her voice tight. "At least not fully. The power it holds. It's not just a weapon, it can alter reality itself. Space, time, everything. If we're not careful, we could open a rift we can't close." The gravity of her words settled over Voss like a thick fog, altering reality. A weapon that powerful was dangerous in anyone's hands, especially the Krathians. "Why didn't you tell me this earlier?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "Because I didn't know how to explain it," she said quietly. "When we activate the artifact, we may not just find the Krathians. We may find ourselves in places we didn't expect. We could be pulled into alternate realities, where things have already gone horribly wrong, or where humanity never rose to power at all." Voss stood still, processing her words. This wasn't just about a fight with the Krathians anymore. It was about controlling a force that could reshape the very fabric of the universe. "Then we need to be careful," Voss said, his voice steady. "We can't afford any mistakes." Isha nodded. "We'll need to stick to the plan. Find the artifact, secure it, and get back before anything can go wrong." The ship's alert system suddenly blared, pulling Voss and Isha from their conversation. An urgent signal flashed on the console in front of him. "Krathian warship," Voss muttered, his heart racing. "They're here." Isha's expression hardened. "It's time." Voss sprang into action, sending orders to his crew. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Get us out of here." But as the USS Horizon began to power up its engines, a strange sensation washed over Voss, like the very air around him had shifted. The lights in the cockpit flickered, and the ship's systems beeped erratically. The stars outside began to blur and bend, twisting in impossible ways. "What the hell?" Voss muttered, trying to steady himself in his seat. The ship shook, the violent tremors rattling through the hull. It wasn't an ordinary attack. Something else was happening. Suddenly, the stars outside vanished, replaced by swirling, chaotic patterns of light and darkness. Voss felt his stomach lurch as the ship seemed to fall into a vast, uncharted void, surrounded by a sea of unfamiliar stars. A distant voice echoed in his mind, a voice he couldn't place. It was Isha's, and it wasn't the voice of anyone he knew. "The fabric of space-time is unstable. Prepare for collision." The message was brief, but its meaning was clear. Something had gone horribly wrong. The ship wasn't in normal space anymore. They had been pulled into something far worse, some sort of rift or alternate dimension. Is this the artifact? Voss gasped, his mind spinning. Did we activate it? Isha's face was pale, her lips tight with worry. Yes. The artifact has opened a rift. We're caught between realities. This is what I was afraid of. We're no longer in our universe. We've crossed into another. Voss gripped the control panel, trying to keep the ship steady. How do we fix it? Isha's voice was grim. We need to find the artifact and stabilize the rift. If we don't, we'll be trapped here forever. We'll never get back to our universe. The ship lurched again, throwing Voss off balance. He gritted his teeth, fighting to keep control. Where are we? What is this place? I don't know, Isha said, her voice strained. It's an alternate reality. We've crossed into a parallel dimension. We might not even be in the same timeline anymore. The stars outside twisted, becoming strange and unfamiliar, their shapes constantly shifting. In the distance, a massive, dark shadow loomed, an imposing structure floating in space. It was a city, but nothing like anything Voss had ever seen before. Its design was alien, both organic and mechanical, with sharp, angular spires and glowing lights pulsing from its core. Is that where we need to go? Voss asked, his eyes scanning the strange city. Isha nodded. Yes, the artifact is there. We'll need to move quickly before the Krathians find us. But this reality, it's different, it's dangerous. We don't know what we're going to find. With no other option, Voss set the ship on course toward the city. As they approached, the strange, chaotic energy that filled the rift seemed to intensify. The city grew larger in their view, its massive structure blocking out the stars. The ship's systems flickered again, and Voss barely managed to hold onto the controls as the ship began to lose altitude. The rift was starting to pull them in, its gravitational force stronger than anything Voss had ever experienced. Hold on, Voss shouted, struggling to regain control. But it was no use. The ship was spiraling toward the surface, pulled by an invisible force. With a violent crash, the USS Horizon slammed into the ground of the alien city, its hull scraping against the rough terrain. The ship came to a halt, smoke rising from the damaged engines. Voss and Isha were thrown forward in their seats, but they both managed to brace themselves. Everyone, report, Voss barked into the comms. There was no response. Isha, he said, his voice tight with urgency, what do we do now? She stood up, her expression resolute. We find the artifact, and we find a way out of here before the Krathians do. Voss didn't need to say anything more. They both knew what was at stake. The Krathians weren't far behind, and if they didn't act fast, they'd never get out of this twisted reality. Together, they grabbed their gear and made their way to the exit. The unknown lay before them. They had no idea what dangers this parallel universe held, but one thing was clear. The clock was ticking, and the fate of humanity depended on them. The strange city loomed before them, its dark, towering spires stretching up toward an ever-changing sky. The air was thick with an unsettling energy, a constant hum that seemed to vibrate through the ground beneath their feet. Eric Voss and Isha stood at the wreckage of the USS Horizon, their only way back to their reality now crippled, its systems completely offline. Voss wiped the sweat from his forehead, his mind racing. They had landed in an alien city, trapped in a reality that felt wrong, twisted. And still, they had to find the artifact before the Krathians did. If the Krathians got their hands on it, they could do more than just destroy humanity. They could unravel everything. Isha, Voss said, turning to her, we need to move quickly. We don't know how much time we have before the Krathians catch up to us. Isha nodded. Her eyes were sharp, scanning the surroundings with a calm that Voss couldn't help but admire. Even now, with the weight of the universe on their shoulders, she never lost her focus. She was different, more than human. And now, she was the only one who could guide them through this chaotic, alternate reality. Stay close, Isha said, taking the lead. We're heading toward the central core of the city. That's where the artifact is hidden. But be careful, we don't know what kind of dangers this place holds. Voss followed, keeping a few paces behind her. The city around them felt alive, its walls pulsating with light as if it were breathing. There was a sense of ancient power here, something older than the stars themselves. But it was also a place of decay, a city that had been abandoned, yet was still brimming with an eerie, unnatural energy. The ground beneath their feet was uneven, cracked in places as if the very fabric of reality was starting to give way. Strange, metallic plants grew in clusters, their tendrils reaching out toward them. Voss instinctively pulled out his weapon, though he didn't know what kind of threat they would face in this dimension. Still, he wasn't taking any chances. "Do you have any idea what we're walking into?" Voss asked, his voice low. "I've never been here before," Isha admitted, her gaze fixed on the path ahead. "But I've studied the records of my people. This city was once a hub of technology. It was meant to be a sanctuary, but something went terribly wrong. The artifact is the key to everything. If we can reach it before the Krathians, we might be able to fix the rift and return home." Voss swallowed hard. "And if we do, then we're stuck here, and the Krathians will use the artifact to destroy everything. They'll reshape the entire multiverse to their will." The weight of her words pressed down on him. He had always believed in following orders, in keeping control. But now, everything was different. The fate of not just one world but countless realities rested on their shoulders. They reached the center of the city, an open plaza surrounded by enormous, twisted pillars. At the center of the plaza was a massive stone structure, its surface covered in strange symbols that seemed to pulse with light. The artifact had to be inside. Voss took a deep breath. "This is it." Isha stepped forward, her hand hovering over the stone structure. As her fingers brushed against it, the symbols shifted, glowing brighter. A low hum filled the air, and the ground trembled beneath them. It was like the city itself was reacting to her touch. "Stand back," Isha said, stepping away. Her eyes were closed, and she murmured something under her breath. The symbols on the structure began to swirl, and with a loud cracking noise, the stone shifted, revealing a hidden chamber within. Inside, on a pedestal of dark metal, lay the artifact, a small, glowing orb that radiated an intense, almost unbearable energy. It pulsed like a heartbeat, its surface shifting between different colors. Voss felt a chill run down his spine as he stepped closer to it. "That's it," he whispered. Isha reached out, but before she could touch the artifact, a shadow fell over them. Voss spun around, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. Standing at the entrance to the chamber was a group of Krathians, tall, armored figures with glowing red eyes and weapons drawn. They were the last thing Voss had expected to find here. He had hoped they'd have more time. "I knew you would come for it," one of the Krathians said, its voice cold and guttural. "The artifact is ours, and now so are you." Isha stepped in front of Voss, her posture defensive. "This is humanity's future, not yours. Leave now or we'll make you." The Krathian leader laughed, a low, menacing sound. "You think you can stop us? You don't even understand what you're holding. The artifact is more than a weapon, it's the key to our victory. The multiverse will bend to our will, and humanity will be erased." Voss's heart pounded in his chest. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and this was the last place they could afford to fail. The Krathians were ready to use the artifact, and if they did, everything would change. But there was no turning back. They had come too far. "We don't have time for this," Voss muttered, his fingers tightening around his weapon. Before he could react, Isha raised her hand and the energy around them shifted. The Krathians froze, their weapons shaking in their hands. Isha was using her powers, something Voss had only seen in brief moments before, but now she was fully in control. "You don't know the power you're dealing with," Isha said, her voice cold and steady. "And you don't know what will happen if you use the artifact." One of the Krathians stepped forward, his voice mocking. "You think you can stop us? You're just a relic of a dead race." "I am not dead," Isha said sharply, her eyes glowing with an intense light. "And neither is humanity." The Krathians lunged forward, but before they could reach them, a burst of energy exploded from Isha's outstretched hand. The ground shook, and the Krathians were thrown backward, crashing into the walls of the chamber. Voss didn't wait. He ran to the pedestal and grabbed the artifact. As soon as his fingers touched it, a surge of energy coursed through his body, lighting up the chamber in blinding white light. The world around him blurred, the city, the Krathians, and even Isha fading away. He was surrounded by swirling colors, time and space itself stretching and bending. He could hear the voices of countless realities, all calling to him at once. For a brief moment, Voss felt as if he were floating through every version of the universe. He saw the Krathians victorious, humanity defeated, and the multiverse shattered. He saw other possibilities, other paths, each one more dangerous than the last. But then a single thought cut through the chaos: humanity must survive. The artifact flared brighter in his hand, and with a sudden jolt, Voss was pulled back to reality. The city was still there, but the Krathians were gone. The chamber was silent, the artifact now glowing softly in his hand. Isha stepped toward him, her expression one of awe. "You did it." Voss looked at the artifact, feeling its power course through him. "We did it, but this isn't over." Isha nodded, a determined look in her eyes. "No, it's just the beginning." The rift had been closed, but Voss knew that this was only one battle in a much larger war. The Krathians might have been stopped, but there were more threats, more challenges ahead. And as long as humanity stood, there would always be hope.